Greetings, all you nightmarish nemesis out there. I'm Duuz-Diz-Din coming at you with another review of J. And she just starts to feel a little down on herself. Valentina has found herself with her marksmanship, and Kaz has found himself with his hand-to-hand combat. Yeah, it's kind of hard to say that when he's in a mech. So Cammy, being very desperate to kind of, catch up with everyone else, goes into her program settings and, considers deleting the very memory of Nemesis, but she chooses against it because, that's deleting your own memories, that could have very adverse effects if you were to do something like that. Like, it could go very badly, but on that note, she also goes into her own personality settings, increasing her confidence and aggression levels, in order to, get a little bit more in line with everyone else, which, she goes through with. Now, Weller himself sees this as, it would be very irresponsible to have settings like this that Weller couldn't see and possibly override, but he chooses not to go through with overriding this command in the end, with him either wanting to see what happens or just wanting her to learn her own lesson. Or he's just a mad scientist, you never know. But Cammy goes up to Miranda and Leon, saying she wants to train a little bit more with the drones, and of course she displays better marksmanship but a very overly aggressive nature. And then she chooses to, spar with Kazu for the most part, and while she does actually manage to get in some good hits, Kazu knows actual martial arts and not just street brawling, so he quickly gains the upper hand, only for, Cammy to, for the most part, what looks like she's overclocking her mech, because the movements become a little too overly fluid. You can always tell when someone's overclocking their mech because their movements get a little too human, and that kind of decreases the uptime for the most part. But then she starts just wailing on Kaz's mech for the most part, to the point where Leon starts to try to call it off. But Cammy has just completely lost herself to the aggression and the rage. Everybody has to pull her off of Kazu, and ultimately Weller just shuts her down right then and there, with everyone just being taken aback by what just happened. Ultimately, Weller tells her, it's just like, look, you can't be doing stuff like this. It's not right to just go in. You're a human being. To do that to yourself, it's just not right. There's risks involved. It works very much like drugs, honestly. You're altering your perception and your mindset in a dangerous and volatile ways that could have very adverse effects on your body as a whole. And as everyone kind of gathers around and kind of tries to talk Cammy through the whole situation, ultimately Cammy says, hey, who cares? Wasn't the whole purpose of the Holion so that we wouldn't actually be involved in the actual combat? Which, Chase speaks again, and just like, no, it's a little more personal, it's a little more intimate than just, the way you're describing it. But this conversation quickly shifts over to the dreams that Cammy's had, where, she embodies the mech of the Holion, where she sees her body, gigantic and all that good stuff. But it quickly turns into a discussion about, how everybody has had this dream, but for some reason, Madrani is the only one who's naked in her dreams for some reason, although she doesn't have, her endowments, as it were. Meanwhile, Valentina, she's more metal than anything else, but she has robotic equipment, if you know what I mean. It's a very fascinating interpretations. Honestly, I could love to hear like a dream interpreter talk about what the meaning behind some of the things in their dreams are, because it should be very interesting. A very fun little situation. But ultimately they end up getting an alert to report to the briefing room as we overhear a bit of a argument between Captain Marine and Dr. Weller over the fact that Weller doesn't feel that they're ready to go back into the field so soon. You know, there's still risks, especially after what happened last time, but Marine is very, adamant about having them get out there, unless, if not, there would be no point, and she even suggests the possibility of them leaving, but leaving Chase behind for the Vanguard as a whole. So, Weller's, really starting to butt heads with Marine in certain aspects, though they do act very, professional from time to time. Mariana is looking at any opportunity to possibly get Weller out of her base. But she ends up addressing the Vanguard unit as a whole, although Miranda ultimately kind of, begs the question to Chase once again. It's just like, do you want to come back to the Vanguard unit? But we get to the mission as a whole, which they have found that there is a Union base out in the territory of No Man's Land, also known as Georgia, and that it is, there's a lot of cloaking to keep it out of satellite surveillance. So they didn't know it's something major must be up with the Union forces, because they had a lot of traffic going in and out of there. There's something that the Union desperately doesn't want the parity to see. So they're going to go in guns blazing, set up a strike and destroy the facility as a whole, just to kind of actually take some time to actually impact the Union in some way, shape, or form. This is a way of ultimately, hopefully, gaining some ground against the Union and actually doing some damage to them. Meanwhile, Leah, Chase, and Miranda end up, meeting up for the most part, much to the displeasure of Jody as of heart. But Miranda continues to talk to Chase about the whole situation of possibly coming back to the Vanguard. Maybe he couldn't pilot the Hullion, but he could come back in a advisory capacity. He doesn't have to constantly fight for the rest of whatever life he has left. But Chase is adamant about doing this, and fighting the Union. It's his own personal way of payback. He wants to, keep fighting as much as he can in order to take back as many lives as possible and not have what happened to him happen to anyone else. But Miranda proposes the question if that's really what he wants to do with his second chance at life. A very adult conversation, That's the thing, they didn't linger on this whole situation too hard and too much. Miranda needed some time to sort through her emotions. She ended up realizing that they still have this connection, this friendship at the very least, and they have this very candid discussion about, what Julian Chase ultimately wants to do with his second chance at life. And I really appreciate this. It doesn't feel like either one is talking down to the other. It's an actual solid conversation, and I'm so thankful to the writers for that, because so rarely do you ever get that in a series. But ultimately, it's discussed the next morning that the Genlock team have new additions in order to hopefully give them the edge should they encounter the Nemesis once again, with Mingus doing the personal work for Julian Chase's Hullion, specifically adding wings, because Chase was born to fly. It's a very nice, touching moment. It shows just how much the people at the Anvil base actually cared for Julian to know him this well. It's just like, it just doesn't feel right unless you're rocking the wings, dude. Like, it's very sweet moment, and I really love this stuff like this. You know, if nothing else, the depth of character is really the selling point in terms of this series. As the base is scoped out by the various forces, they end up seeing that various people are being unloaded into the base. One of specific work is Dr. Hang Li Wu, who is I think they said former NASA scientist, so, you know, they're definitely planning something major. And, you know, they wonder what they should do, with Weller ultimately saying, you know, wanting to get him out of there. You know, they could possibly learn some great details, and it would be great to have a respected member of the scientific community on their side rather than the Union. So it's decided they will rescue the hostages, then blow the fuck out of that bitch, killed her. But then the Nemesis creature is just like, you haven't stopped thinking ever since your birthday. And it's just like, what the hell? And it starts going at them on all sixes,